Whatever you do, don't ask for help. A two-man job can easily be done by one if you're dumb enough. Welcome back, everybody, and today I'm going to continue my work on the iKamper Skycamp Mini, specifically fixing these hinges. One hinge had pulled out because of some wind, so I'm going to remove the pop rivets from that and get it set. And the rest of the hinges, they're still held in place by pop rivets, and I just don't like that, so I'm going to try to replace their fastening hardware as well using a set of riv nuts. First, we need to get the old hinges off, and that means getting rid of the factory countersunk pop rivets. To show you how I remove these, I'll demonstrate on the hinge that already broke off. The first thing I do is knock in the rivet stem using a drift punch. Just place the punch in the hole of the rivet and use a small hammer to knock the stem in. This will allow us to use a drill to shear off the rivet head. Next, use a drill bit with the same width as the hole or slightly larger to drill into the head. Don't go crazy here or you'll drill right through your work. The goal here is to drill down to where the shank meets the head, at which point the head will shear right off. Once the head is off, you can then just punch the rest of the rivet into the hole and out of your way. Now the riv nuts that I got and I'm going to try to use are these 3.3 to 5.7 millimeter grip length riv nuts. They're 5 millimeter and they require a drill bit size N. And so that's where I have this N size drill bit that I'm going to use to oversize these holes and see how well they fit. But first, let's take a moment to look at what riv nuts do and how they work. In this piece of test stock, I've already drilled the hole with the size N drill bit. I've got my riv nut tool set with an M5 die, and then you basically just thread the riv nut onto it. It's similar to a pop rivet, but what it does is it gives you a blind fastener with threads. You insert the riv nut into your work, and then you start to squeeze the things down, and you'll notice that the riv nut back will start to deform and compress against the work. This is going to lock it in place and prevent it from spinning, hopefully, once it's installed correctly. And what you're left with is a nice blind fastener that you can thread something into. That's the premise behind what we're going to try to do for these hinges right now. So let's give it a shot. So let's see if we can't oversize these holes just the right amount. Put a riv nut in. Before we get too far, let's test to see if this bad boy will actually work. I think that might actually work. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I was hesitating for a second, thinking I might just leave the rest of these pop rivets in place and not replace them with riv nuts, but my gut tells me I'm going to regret that because one, this one is sitting about 1 millimeter proud because of the lip of the riv nut, so it would be different than these. Two, I really don't want to do this again if these pop rivets fail, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and knock these out and replace them all with riv nuts. Let's get it on. As I suspected, the way those pop rivets needed to be pushed back in means they didn't expand behind the work. In other words, they didn't expand and mushroom on the back side of the rail. They actually expanded within the hole that was drilled for them, which is the same thing that happened to this one, which is why it had such a piss poor grip. So I'm glad I'm going to be replacing all of these with riv nuts. I think it's going to make it a lot better. Alright, I think that solves our hinge problem. Next is the fiberglass. So one of the challenges with this fiberglass is going to be, it looks like it's stuck. If you see here, I don't know if you can see, this thing ends up coming out and angling that way. And I think because as it cracked, some of the fiberglass just kind of binded in there. So in order to unbind it and straighten this piece back out like that, I think what I'm going to do is take a Dremel and just relieve this material here, basically get it out, because I can fill this in later. I just want to make sure I'm starting off from a good solid point. there's stress cracks in the paint here. So this is currently under stress, and I'm going to want to reinforce all of this anyway. So out with some of this material. Might even need to stop drill this crack. It doesn't go all the way through, but we're going to get the paint off and see what we're left with. Okay, so here's where we're at. We chopped out this piece. We started getting out all of the loose fiberglass in here and sanded it down to the bare fiberglass so that we can have good adhesion. On the outside, did the same thing. I'll probably need to go a little bit more up here, but you'll notice that it's pretty thin in some areas, so I'm gonna have to reinforce those. And this piece here still isn't quite straight, so I'm gonna suck it in and hold it when I glass it. And I found it really interesting, this void. Now, this doesn't look like delamination from any kind of crack. If it is, it's an awful big delam. I think it might be just part of the construction of this tent, where there's an outer clamshell and an inner clamshell. And for all I know, there's a deliberate air void in between to act as an insulation barrier. I'm not sure, but this is going to end up getting filled in anyway so that we can reinforce its structure. And we're going to fill this in with angel hair, and then we're going to glass this surface here for one nice big continuous patch. I like to use aluminum tape as a backer, so I put some aluminum tape on the outside of the shell because I'm going to start with the inside. And what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to lay it down on the part that's broken so I can give it a little bit more oomph. Let the weight of the clamshell itself push that piece up just enough. Might shim it a little bit, we'll see. But the aluminum tape is going to serve to keep everything in place. And even though I don't have any kind of release agent in the past, I've been able to pull this tape off of cured fiberglass pretty well. Okay, I brought this thing down on the floor now, and we've basically let the weight of the clamshell sit on a small piece of 2x4 in just the right spot, I think, to straighten it out, and that's where we're going to glass it. I'm going to mix up some resin and then fill that void with some angel hair, also known as just 1/4-inch chopped fibers. It's really just chopped up fiberglass. And so I have Bondo fiberglass resin, and it comes with a hardener. Now, for a small batch, I'm going to do 1 ounce of resin and 10 drops of hardener. And to measure that out fairly accurately, I just stole the wife's food scale, so I'm going to use that. Use this mixing cup, tare it, measure out 1 ounce, measure out 10 drops, and then get to work. It's only got like maybe 8 to 10 minutes of working time, so I'll do my best to film what I can, but I'm gonna need to work pretty quick. So here we go. Filled in the voids with some angel hair and resin. We're gonna let that cure. I like to hold on to the cup so that when this turns rock hard, that should hopefully be rock hard. So that should probably take about a day to cure up. So tomorrow we'll take a look at it. If it's ready to go, we'll sand it down, and then we should be ready to lay some cloth over it to go over the entire thing and not have to worry about any voids. So see you then. All right, it's the next day and it looks like everything came out pretty good. The fiberglass is dried up and cured. You can see here the filler did its job. It's nice and solid and it's holding it up. And the nice thing about using aluminum tape is I should be able to just strip this off. It might stick a little, but you can see how it comes off relatively easy. So it made a nice backing that didn't stick. So all this should sand off nicely. What I'm going to do is clean this up with some sandpaper, get it smooth, and get it ready to lay some actual cloth to start fixing this thing optically or cosmetically. So yeah, time to break out the sandpaper. right, once again, next morning, we're looking at the fiberglass cloth having cured. Looks good. So we'll sand that down. Got a little bit of a divot here still, so I'm gonna do more build up there. You can see from the side profile, it's a little thin right here. So I'm gonna build up more here and a little bit more there. More on the outside than the inside, because the inside is where I have very tight clearance tolerances. And yeah, one little boo-boo, having it not padded down here, but that's easy enough. Basically, you just take a razor knife, cut that out, and then sand as you normally would. So, all right, we're getting there. I think sanding this down and one more layer of glass to help build up these last parts, and we'll be ready for a test fit. All right, so we've got all of the glass done, at least as far as I'm gonna take it. So I've laid in the filler and then sanded that down and then laid 3 separate layers of glass in building order in order to kind of bring us back up to the original shape. There's still some minor imperfections and blemishes, which I'm gonna fill with a skim coat of body filler, sand it down one more time, maybe take it down to 320 or something, and then finally just paint it black. I thought I might repaint the whole thing, but you know, right now I just kind of want this thing out of my shop so I can get on to some other projects. Getting the structure restored and everything good to go is my main priority. With that, let's get the skim coat of body filler on, let that dry, sand it, and we'll be ready to go. All right, it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty darn good. So I've got fiberglass and a skim coat of Bondo, some filler. Gotta love that nice smooth feeling. Sanded it down, finished it up with 320 grit, and now I'm going to move this thing out and give it a shot of paint. Outside looks good, inside is decent. I didn't really spend as much time sanding it to make it look pretty because, well, it's inside. Let's move this bad boy out and get some paint on it. So fully assembled and packed back up, this thing worked flawlessly. The hinges worked exactly as they should. I didn't have any binding issues on the part that I fiberglassed back here. As you can see, you can hardly tell unless you really get up to it. I couldn't be happier with the plan to use riv nuts. I think they worked out wonderful. My only hope is that someday I don't need to remove those hinges again and go to take out the screws and have the riv nuts spin in the background. It was fun to get into fiberglassing again. It's been a while since I did that. I'm not perfect at it, but it did the job. What do you think? What would you have done differently? Or what could I have done better? Either way, I hope you learned something this time around. Fun project, I'm glad it's done, and I'm looking forward to the next one. Until the next time, this is Tom the Dilettante saying keep on tinkering, keep on learning, and have a good one.